Alright guys, so in case you weren't in my stream last week, I actually announced that I'm no longer a part of NSG. And in short, I kind of lost ownership of it. There's a little bit of backstory that I do have to go through to explain in order for you guys to understand what happened. So my goal in this video is to casually explain to you guys what happened, what went wrong, what were some things that I was learning from this all, and I'm actually going to break this video down into two parts. So this first part, which is this video right now, is going to be a more casual explanation, which for those of you that just want to know what happened, I'm going to tell you straight up what happened. And for the second part, which will be in a different video, I'm going to be explaining more so the business aspect, the legal side of it, contracts, all that nitty gritty detail stuff, and that's going to be in a different video, so look out for that one. But I would recommend you go through this one so you do get the general idea of what happened with NSG. I do have a little disclaimer to make. So this video is not intended to harm any of the parties that I mentioned. I'm here to explain what happened, how I dealt with the loss, and more so what I learned coming out of this first experience. And in a sense, this is kind of like my first business venture that just didn't work out, and it is what it is, and you just live and you learn. Okay, so let's get straight into the start. So essentially, I'm no longer a part of NSG, which stands for No Sleep Gang. And if there's anybody that's new here, that's actually my very first brand ever. It's my community, my brand. It's my little baby that I started and I grew, and today I no longer own it, nor am I a part of it. So this means that the NSG studio, the PCs, the merch, future drops, all of that is gone. I'm no longer going to be involved in any of that. I'm pretty much starting from scratch, essentially, again. And I no longer am part of NSG. So everything that you saw in the previous video where we talked about it, it's all completely gone. So it's all gone. It's just the way it is. So now the short business explanation to what happened was I sold the brand to an investor, and we both agreed to work together to grow the brand. And somewhere throughout all of this, I started to pick up on a lot of red flags, which to me, they were definitely more red flags in the beginning, but I was choosing to pretend that they weren't there. I didn't want to accept the fact that this could go wrong. Ultimately, in the end, when I decided that I didn't want to continue this business relationship, I wasn't able to buy back the brand at a price that was reasonable to me. So I simply chose to just part ways, and now here we are today. There was a lot of red flags that ultimately led me to believe that I should no longer continue this business relationship, and eventually led to the downfall. And there's one red flag, which if you've been a part of my streams, you might have noticed this, but I don't even have my own merch. So I've never actually worn any of my own NSG clothes, which blows my mind. It's ridiculous because, I mean, when you partner with somebody and you become the face of the brand, you would assume that by the very least you would get your own merch. And it just didn't make sense for me to buy my own merch. That's one of the first red flags that I noticed, which I couldn't realize until after our first sale. Now, to add on to that, there was a lot of false promises that were made to me, which I should have been a lot more careful of. I'll give you an example. I was promised a content creation team to help me in creating content, a video editor, a person to film, a person to take care of the photo shoots, but I ended up doing all of that myself, which again kind of like didn't make sense to me because that's a lot of load. I was ready to scale up and do a lot more content creating, but when you're doing it yourself, you might as well be doing the entire thing yourself. So that was kind of like my logic there. So that was another red flag that was just really frustrating for me. And again, like, I wouldn't have known all of this until I already got myself into it. This is why I noticed these red flags later on rather than sooner. So that's another red flag. Another red flag for me was that I was promised a lot of control in the direction of NSG. And in the beginning, I was getting that. At least I thought I was getting that. But as time went on, there was a lot of aspects where my voice wasn't really being heard, even though I was saying it. And I'll give you an example. The prices of the merch was a lot higher than I wanted it to be. And I know my audience. I've been working with my audience for the past year and a half, at least. And I was really pushing for a price that was reasonable, and just that lack of control, or at least the lack of control that I realized later on, it was just something that there was a lot more instances where I wasn't getting the control that I wanted, and it was just a red flag for me. Moving on, I'll give you another example. There was a lot of hiccups in our workflow, and I don't have any problems with hiccups, and with anything that you do, you will have a lot of hiccups, but I initially thought that I was getting myself in a situation where these people are experts, they know what they're doing, they will take care of everything. But when it came down to actually, sourcing the merch, getting it printed and all that work stuff, the workflow just wasn't there. It almost felt like nobody knew what was happening, and no one was really taking control of the whole thing, and I had to step up along with Janice. We both had to step up to take care of that. And there was just a lot of promises. There was just a lot of situations where I believed that these people were one thing when in reality it was not that thing. And to me, again, I would not have figured that out until later on when it came down to doing the work. So I don't want to ramble on too much about the negatives, but in short, I was just unhappy with how things were being run. And there's a saying, you don't want to dig yourself a deeper hole. And there just came a point when I believed that I was better off cutting my losses now before I ultimately became the face of something that I never initially wanted to be the face of. At the end of the day, we parted ways. It is what it is. And sadly, I no longer own NSG. It was a huge learning experience for me. And guys, when I say I was fucking down bad, like I was horrible. And Andre knows, because I was seeing this guy a lot.
That's right.
My birthday, which is when we actually announced the brand, and the end of the month of that, so March 1st, when we actually did the launch, there was a 2-month period afterwards where there was just a lot of tension between me and the company. So we were kind of like butting heads a lot, and there was a lot of back and forths, and it came to the point where I didn't want to stream because I had to lie to my audience that everything was okay. And I hated that. I don't like lying to my audience. And at the same time, I wasn't really ready to accept that this was going to fail, essentially. And I spent a lot of time like isolating myself, which it sucks, but I really believed that I just wasn't ready to handle that this was gonna fail. Straight up, I wasn't ready to handle it, and I kind of like run and hid, and I disappeared, and I only restricted myself to a small group of people, and I stopped streaming. I kind of like cut off with the TikTok content. Like, I was pushing NSG because I loved and believed in it so much, all for it to just like slip out of my hands. And I wasn't like, I just wasn't ready to accept that. And I kind of felt like a clown in reality. Like I really did feel like a clown. And now it's like, fuck, we're here now. So, so for like that 2-month period, where like shit was like kind of going down, I think like part of the frustration in all of this was not just the fact that I had put so much time and effort into NSG and like growing the brand, but I also took up a lot of time of the people around me who also believed in it. And to me, I think that was like painful. And I'll give you one example. Janice, my lovely girlfriend, she put a lot of time, effort, sweat, and tears into the brand. And the fact that it just kind of like all came down to this was very frustrating to accept. And it's not just Janice, there's so many others that have helped me with NSG, and now it kind of just like slipped out of my hands. So I think that was also another aspect which really kind of just like forced me to feel the way that I felt, where I was isolating myself and disappearing. So I'm happy to say now that I'm doing a lot better, hence this video. I'm actually opening up about it. I do want to get back in the flow of things once I like completely explain the situation. And there was a lot, this was like a huge learning experience for me. So moving forward, there is no more NSG. I'm no longer going to be repping the brand. I will talk about this experience because it's kind of like my first baby that I lost. So I will talk about this experience, and I will continue to keep doing what I do. With that being said, I do want to talk a little bit how I did get myself out of that rut, because it might benefit any of you guys who also might feel like you're in a rut. So obviously with my social media career kind of like on a pause, and I stopped streaming, I stopped doing that when I isolated myself. What I actually did was I put a lot of time and effort into, I shifted my focus into taking care of other aspects of my life. So my fitness has been fucking like exploding lately, and I'm actually getting back in the groove of it, which is fucking amazing. I've been actually seeing friends again, Andre. I've been seeing friends again and opening up about the situation, and I think that like this was like really needed for me, because it gave me a different perspective, multiple different perspectives on the situation, and how I should reframe my perspective on the situation. So I started like waking up a lot earlier now too. I started reading more books. I listen to Audible pretty much every day now. A lot of like good things came out of this, and I do want to talk more about what I learned on the business aspect, but again, that'll be for part 2. Happy to say though, my habits are improving, and I wanted to take those 2 months to position myself for success in the next thing that I start, because I have all this time. I'm generally a person who believes in productivity, and when I'm down emotionally like that, I had to figure out something. So I definitely spent a lot of time cleaning up my habits. I want to get back into streaming and get that shit together. I want to make more YouTube videos, so you're gonna see more of these. But aside from that, that's essentially what happened with NSG. Now in part 2 of the video, we're gonna talk more about the business side. So like more so about the contract, the ownership. I want to explain more of that, especially for those of you who actually might be getting yourself in a similar situation, or you just want to actually learn from what I've learned. So part 2, it will have the business explanation. So that's going to be that, and make sure to watch out for that. So now to close this video, I do want to leave you guys with one last thing. At the end of those 2 months, I think my biggest fear was, so now what? I was definitely scared of what's next, because I didn't know what was next. So With that being said, I did kind of like figure out a better way for me to see the situation. The answer to now what is I don't know, but on to the fucking next. Let's go.